Hello, everyone, to the fourth edition of Virtual Literary Festival. And today we have Bharti Pradhan with us. Bharti ji is a film critic. She's also an author of several books, and we'll be talking about the same. I will just wait for Bharti ji to join. Hi, everyone. Hi, Myra. Hi. Hi, Sharmila ji. Hi, Nirmesh. So, there we have Bharti ji. And hello, Bharti ji. How are you?
Hi. Good. How about you?
Very well. So, what's
Good.
happening? How are you dealing with this lockdown?
I think wonderfully because there's been time to do so many things that I've been wanting to do. I mean, there's this book called East West Street, which is on the Nuremberg trials and how they came about. I've been reading that. It's a difficult book to read because it's got a lot of these East European names, Polish names, and it's difficult to keep track. But I read that book and it's wonderful because, I didn't even know that the word genocide was coined because of those trials. It was coined at those trials. I didn't know
Oh,
that. So I learned a lot by reading that book. Otherwise, we all know about the Nazis and the Jews and what happened, but this really gave an insight into exactly what was happening and how they were brought to trial. So I read a lot of books and I read a variety. I mean, I read Dan Brown's Origin. Then I read Prem Sagar's wonderful book on his father, Ramanand Sagar. My friend Parikshit Sani wrote a really fabulous book on his iconic father, Balraj Sani. Then
hmm.
I read a lot of books, and so I've been reading, and I've been writing my next book. That has taken up a lot of my time,
I
actually.
was about to ask that. What are you writing these days?
Well, I can't tell you because I have a confidentiality clause in my contract, but I have been signed by somebody very important to write his book. And I can only tell you that it has something to do with the entertainment industry and it has got stories nobody's ever heard before.
Well, we all know because we've read the previous books that you've written. So, Bharti ji,
Yes.
tell us, how did this start? How did you become a film critic? I mean, you were always in Mumbai?
Oh, well, I've been in Mumbai since the age of 16, so I guess you can say I've always been here. But I used to write letters. Those days, letter writing was something else because the letters to the editor used to get published. I'm talking about the late 60s, early 70s. I used to write letters to the editor, and people didn't know I was a schoolgirl writing letters. So they used to print it, and I would get the best letter price of 25 rupees and be most thrilled because that was more than what my pocket money was. So it was great fun. And then when I came to Mumbai and they realized that I was a schoolgirl, but I could still write, they offered me a job right away. In the Times of India, they asked me to do a column. They had something called the Evening News those days, which was
Hmm.
a very popular evening paper. So they asked me to do a column for them. And I started writing this column when I was still in college. And
Wow.
it just took off from there. So I was barely 17 when I started. And before I graduated, I had become a full-fledged journalist.
That's so wonderful to hear. So you started your journey at a very young age when you were
Very
still in
young age. I
college.
started earning my own living by the time I was 17. Yes.
That's wonderful. So then, how did you become a film critic? I mean, from writing these columns, you ended up becoming a film critic. You started writing, reviewing
Well,
films.
because that's part of the job. I mean, you're writing a column, and then I was called by the rival paper, which was in those days called the Free Press Bulletin, and that was also very popular. Everybody, but everybody from JRD Tata down to the person giving me the Udupi guy who would come and serve me my idli sambar. Everybody read the Free Press Bulletin those days, and it was just part of the job that you go interview people, you go write stories, and then you go see films and you review them. So it was just became part of the job. It was not something that one did only as a critic. One did it as a film journalist. This is part of the job. And I have to tell you something. I was only 17 years old. I was sent to go and cover a film which had been banned by the censors. There was a
Okay.
lady called Asha Putli who had made a very wild film. And so when censored hadn't passed it, and the media was called to come and see it. I was underage. I wasn't 18, and I was, so there was this little bit of a skirmish at the door saying, how can you go in kind of, and I looked even younger than what I was. So, then I had to prove my credentials that I've come here as a journalist, etc. But I watched the film, yeah. Yeah, so
Now
I've,
that we're
it's a great time.
now that we're talking about the censor board, you've been a part of a lot of
Yes,
boards.
I am.
You've been a
I
part of
am.
the film board. You're a part of the censor board. So
I
how
am.
does what is your job as a member of these boards?
As a member of the censor board in Bombay, I I can just tell you one thing. We have the chairperson is Prasun Joshi, renowned writer, lyricist. And the only thing he told me, because a lot of people had scared me saying that, oh, it's political and you'll have to toe the political line and stuff like that. But when I went there, the only thing Prasun Joshi told me was, he said, anything, anything that lowers the dignity of a woman, you will not pass. I'm not going to ask you about anything else. He says, the others, you just let you go by what the guidelines or whatever you want. But he never said a word politically or there was no ideology, no nothing. The only thing he told me, I said, sometimes it's a joke, there's an English film that we were watching and, there was some kind of joke passed about a woman's boobs. And they said, so I said, it's only a joke. They said, no, it starts with a joke. That's what Prasan Joshi told me. He said it starts with a joke and then it goes on into becoming a mindset. So therefore, you have to nip it wherever you see it. And I just loved what he told me because I thought it made so much sense. It was something I hadn't thought of as a woman. But what he told me made much sense. So after that, we've been very, very careful. And that is the only rule that we follow. And that's the only rule I've been given, that just don't do anything that lowers the dignity of a woman. I think it's a wonderful job we're doing at Censor Board simply because I think they have a fabulous person as a chairperson.
That's wonderful. Now, you've also been a writer. So you started writing books and you have written some iconic books about iconic personalities. So how
Yes.
did that start? What was your first book and how did you, it start?
My first book was because I was on maternity leave and I was staying at home and I was very frustrated because I wasn't used to sitting at home. Mr. Nari Hira, the iconic publisher of every magazine that you can think of, Stardust, Showtime, Society, Island, New Health and Nutrition. Fabulous, first fabulous publisher. I used to work with him. I used to edit a magazine for him. So when I went on maternity leave and I started writing a very, very adult romance, it was very, very randy. And it was just a very, it was just a romantic book. And I called it Valentine Lover. It was very graphic. It was totally different from the kind of work I'm doing now. So I was just writing this book, and Mr. Hira was in touch with me, although I was no longer working with him. And he said, "Look, I'm traveling. I'm going to London." So I said, "Hey, I've got this book. I want you to read." So he said, "You didn't tell me you were writing something." I said, "I wasn't sure." He said, "Listen, I'm leaving on Thursday." So that gave me a deadline. I sat up all nights and I sent him the manuscript, which he just took with him on flight. And he went Bombay to London, landed in London, and rang me up from Heathrow saying, "I'm publishing your book." So
Okay.
that was how I became a writer. And he published my first book. Magna used to be into publishing books at that time. And
Right.
he published my first book. It was very controversial because it was, like I told you, very graphic. It was an adult romance, but it sold and sold and sold and went into several reprints. But after that, no, I just kind of moved on and started writing other stuff. I write a lot of non-fiction now because I did the official biography of Shatrughan Sinha, which was a hot-selling book. And then
Big hit.
I did The Dark Horse, which was on Priyanka Chopra, on how to be a winner. Then I have co-authored a book on Mr. Modi. which is called the Modi Years. I've done a lot, and I did a fabulous book for Dainik Bhaskar people because you and I, we speak English and we read English newspapers. We don't realize that the main readership, it comes from the
The
Hindi and the
Hindi
regional
newspaper.
papers. Yes. So I didn't know Dainik Bhaskar was the number one newspaper in the country. If somebody had asked me 4 years ago, I'd have said Times when you're Hindu or something. So when the Dainik Bhaskar people asked me to do a book on them, I realized while I was researching and talking to them that Mr. Ramesh Chandra Agarwal, who had set up, who was the brain behind Dainik Bhaskar, what he had gone through, the kind of risks he had taken, and the kind of rough political times he had to go through to be where he is, made a fabulous story. And then I did this too. So I wrote this book on the making of the number one newspaper of the country. That was also very heartening. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of good work, I would say.
That's wonderful. This is quite exciting to hear all the stories that you must have heard while writing these
Yes.
amazing books. So, would you
Yeah.
like to share a little bit? I mean, some story of one of your books that you've written. I can't say favorite books because it's like asking a mother to choose a child because you've
Yeah,
written
I
so
agree.
many of them. So, could you please
Right.
read out or share a story from one of your books?
Well, I'm not going to read out because I don't have any of the books with me right now here.
No problem.
But I can tell you that Priyanka Chopra was a very different kind of book because you normally, I mean, Shatrughan Sinha was very much on board when I did the biography on him. He was the one who asked me, would you write this book? Because he got an offer from a publisher. And we got together and wrote the book. And we've been friends for a very long time. So that was lovely to do. It was one of the loveliest experiences of my life because we spent 7 years doing it. We traveled all over wherever he went. He's an intrepid traveler. I think he does more miles than any pilot. You
Hmm.
know, wherever he went, I would go with him, tag along, and he would keep talking. I'd have my tape on. I'd meet all the people that he was meeting and get points from them. So it was really a fabulous experience over 7 years, and
Wow.
and I think he loved the experience as much as I did because he wasn't willing to put a full stop to it. And then I had to give him a deadline and say nothing doing now. When the Bihar assembly elections are over, we're coming out with the book. And so the assembly elections were over. The results came out on the 8th of November, and my book was ready by the 15th of December. So that's how
How
we,
wonderful.
yeah. So it was wonderful. It was a lovely experience. But Priyanka Chopra was a totally different one because you see, she was not on board. It was not an official biography. And I didn't want an official biography because in fact, when I was in the midst of doing this book, I got a call from her people. They heard about the book and they said, do you want an NOC from us? And I said, no, I don't. Because an NOC would mean that, and you see, if it says Priyanka, she's fine, she's a lovely girl. But unfortunately, these don't operate on their own these days. They have a battery of agents and managers who will tell them what to do and how to breathe and how to sit and how to talk. And I wasn't willing to have my manuscript vetted by any of them.
Right.
So simply because I didn't want my manuscript vetted by anybody, I said, no, I don't want an NOC. And I did the book. And I knew it was going to be a very positive book. I wasn't going to write anything which was defamatory, but it was definitely going to trace her entire story right from the time she came into the industry, or even before, even when she was Miss World. So I talked to a whole lot of people, including Pradeep Guha, who was with her during Miss World. I spoke to some of her relatives. I spoke to people in her school. I spoke to a lot of her colleagues here, right from Sanjay Leela Bansali and everybody who mattered. Anurag Basu had done that wonderful film Bharti with her. So I spoke to a whole range of top-notch people and put together this book. So I knew Madhur Bhandarkar, who got the National Award for Fashion. So I spoke to a whole lot of people who gave me authentic stories on her. Sunil Darshan, who gave her a break, Anil Sharma, who gave her a break. So, I spoke to all these people, and she had been through a very rough patch before she made it. I mean, we only know about Priyanka Chopra, the winner, but the number of times she had been put down, she had done a nose job which went wrong, and she lost some 8 films as a newcomer with that. Who knows these stories? So it was
Right.
wonderful putting these stories together, and they were all authentic stories backed by people who had, who were witness to it.
Work with her.
So I wrote this. Yeah, so I wrote this book, and it's the book of a winner. How, despite all these setbacks, you can still be a winner. So I just loved writing that book because I myself learned so much from it. I think anybody in any field at any age can read that book and get something from it. It's that kind of book.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
have you read it? Have you read it?
I have the book. I've not read it. Probably this is the right time
You're not
to.
my friend anymore. You're not my friend anymore. There's one story in that I have to tell you, Anurag. There's a story about Manish Malhotra. And this is something, again, because it's an authentic book, Manish himself gave me the story. That there was a time when he and Priyanka were doing a film for Dharma Productions, Dostana. And Manish and Priyanka were not on the best of terms. So at that time, they had gone to Miami and they were shooting there. So there were, few hiccups there in the sense Manish didn't feel he was being appreciated enough. And, he thought, he laid out such a fabulous wardrobe for her. And there this lady's just, kind of not even complimenting him or going gaga over it. And I think Manish was used to that. So then, finally, it was the last day of shooting. And Karan told him that, we're shooting this Desi girl in Bombay and Film City. So come to the shoot. So now Manish Malhotra sent a message saying, "Thank God it's my last day with Priyanka." And he sent it. Now, by mistake, instead of sending it to Karan, he sent it to Priyanka.
Oh God.
So can you imagine, within a minute, Karan Johar rang him up saying, "What have you done, Manish? Why did you send this message to Priyanka? She rang me up crying." So then he realized the mistake he'd made. He said, okay, he reached Film City. There was this big scene. Farah Khan was choreographing Desi boys and Desi girl. And, and all these people were on the sets. And there was Priyanka crying. So Manish just went straight up to her and said, "Look, I'm sorry, that message wasn't meant for you." But she said, "But what is this message? What's our problem? What's the problem between you and me that you could send a message like this to anybody?" And then what happened was, now if you or I, at least I know for sure, I'm so volatile, that if somebody had done this to me, I'd have either slapped that guy and made it worse, or I'd have just stopped talking to him and made it worse. What she did was, she turned this into an opportunity to make a friend. The way she handled the entire incident, she and Manish became the best of friends after that. So, an opportunity where you can make a friend and take a relationship forward, make it very positive, instead of making an enemy and making a situation worse. I mean, I think anybody could learn from this, isn't it? It was wonderful. I just thought it was such a lovely way of handling a situation. I knew I was incapable of handling it like that. So I was very happy to, I just feel at any age you can learn. And I definitely learned while writing this book on Priyanka.
How wonderful. Now that gives us an inspiration to go get the book and read the book.
Yes. What do you think I would try to do?
Of course, I'll tell everyone to go get that book and read the book that she's written. It's called The Black Horses.
No, The Dark Horse.
The Dark Horses. The Dark Horses.
No, The Dark Horse. The Dark Horse. Singular.
Oh, it's just The Dark Horse.
Dark Horse. Yeah.
It's The Dark Horse.
Chopra, The Dark Horse. Yeah.
And it's published by
Om Books. They are my publishers. I have this wonderful rapport with Ajay Mago, the publisher, and my chief editor, Deepa Chaudhary. We are all buddies, and I have a fabulous relationship with all of them. So they do all of my books. Yes.
Wonderful. So that is the publisher. You can go find the book and read the book. This is the best time when you can, actually read all her books. She's written several books. You can all find them and read all of them. Thank you so much, Bharti ji, for doing this and coming online. This is for the first time you've come online, and I thank you for that.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.